Hello and welcome into Devils in Detail headquarters here at the beautiful Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Hunter Robinson. On this week's show, we're talking women's basketball, hockey, softball, and baseball. So let's get started. The women's basketball team hasn't had the easiest start of 2017. A season full of hope and promise seemed to go down the drain when senior Kelsey Moose went down with an injury at the start of conference play. In a competitive Pac-12 where literally every game matters, the Sun Devils sit in 5th place and don't seem to be gaining ground on UCLA, who currently sits in 4th. With only a few more weeks remaining in the season, it's time to see if the women's team is going to try to make a push or if they're just going to wait and see what happens in the Pac-12 tournament. I'm now joined by Jordan Kay and Gigi McKetty to help me break down this past weekend for ASU. Thank you two for joining me. So Jordan, I'll go ahead and start with you. The Sun Devils, they weren't able to come out on top this past weekend against the University of Washington. What are your takeaways from that game?
They couldn't stop Washington's two best players in Kelsey Plum and Chantel Osahor. Those two are both the best at what they do in the country. Plum leads the nation in scoring. Osahor leads the nation in rebounding. And they let Plum get 29 points on 26 shots. When you let someone get that many shots, they're bound to have a good night. And Osahor, they let have a nice double-double of 18 and 18. They just could not defend at all. It was just a very big problem for them. Down low, Sophie Bruner and Quinn Dornstadter weren't getting the minutes that they needed. They brought Kiana Ibis in for a little bit. She did okay, but ultimately without Kelsey Moose, they're having to play 3 guards on 3 forwards, and it's a bad recipe.
All right, so Gigi, while this team may not have come out on top over the University of Washington, they did earn wins against Washington State on Friday and then Oregon the weekend prior. What did those 2 wins mean for this team that, frankly, has been inconsistent at times?
Honestly, those 2 wins were huge. They were coming off a 4-game losing streak, and if they hadn't gotten those 2, they probably would have lost a lot worse to Washington. And it sets them up nicely for these last 4 games to come out strong against Arizona and then hopefully get a win against USC.
Now, Jordan, Sabrina Haynes has seemed to sort of jump out onto the scene for ASU as of late. She has a combined 33 points in the previous 3 contests. What has she been for this team?
Well, the funny thing about those 33 points is 31 of them came in the first 2 games. But she was the catalyst for those 2 games that ASU needed at the guard position. 14 and 17 against Oregon and Washington State, and she really added another dimension to ASU's offense. Mostly their entire offense is built around getting the ball down low to Quinn Dornstadter and Sophie Bruner. But for Haynes with that little bit, they were a deep threat for threes and guards driving in. Then against Washington, kind of Riley Richardson took over that role, but they're going to need someone to step up going forward at the guard position. For 2 games, it was Sabrina Haynes, and we can see if she can carry that on into the Pac-12 tournament.
And then finally, Gigi, the Sun Devils have only 4 games remaining before they're in Seattle for the Pac-12 tournament. What does this team need to change between now and then?
Honestly, they just really need to remain consistent with their shooting. They've been so off and on with it, and especially with the freshmen, like Robbie Ryan was doing well for a while and she's dropped off recently, but now Sabrina Haynes is stepping up. If all of them can just remain consistent and work together as a team, they're going to succeed and do well in the tournament.
Alrighty, well, thank you two for joining me. We'll have to see if they do get a little more consistent for the remainder of the season. The Arizona State hockey team has been the hottest thing in Arizona as of late. They're 5-2 since the start of 2017, and that's while facing 3 ranked teams. This past weekend, the Sun Devils hosted Simon Fraser, a school from the British Columbia Intercollegiate Hockey League. And the Sun Devils closed out their home schedule in dominant fashion. They beat Simon Fraser 8-1 in the first game and 4-2 in the second. The Sun Devils have 1 series left in their second season as a Division I program, as they will travel to Michigan to take on the under-18 USA national team. I'm now joined by Nicholas Batters and Ethan Schmidt, who are going to help me digest all of this great hockey we've been seeing lately. Thank you two for joining me. So, Nick, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with you. Simply put, what went right for ASU this past weekend?
Honestly, I think just about everything went right. It was the last weekend at home for the seniors. Now, the NCAA slate is over, so this isn't a game that officially counts in their statistics. None of the rest of the games count in their record or anything like that, but everything was working really well. Brinson Pashnik in the first game, he had a hat trick, and over the course of the 2 games, Arizona State had 4 power play goals. That's somewhere that they've struggled all season long, and that was really good. Not only that, but the defense was looking really strong. Rob Levin in goal. He didn't have to face a whole lot of shots. And success on special teams combined with good defense, that's a recipe for success right there.
And then, Ethan, with the season winding down, who has been your MVPs for this season?
Well, Hunter, I think it starts off with the graduate transfer, Robbie Balarjian. The Sun Devils needed somebody with experience, someone that could come over while they're taking on their full Division I NCAA season. And I think they found that in Balarjian. And he finished the regular season with 9 goals, 12 assists for a total of 21 points. And then we move on to the Phoenix native, Anthony Croston. He's a sophomore, and he really stepped up big, especially down the stretch. 10 goals, 11 assists for a total of 21 points. And then the blue liner, who did not play like a freshman this season, he was a real silent leader for this Sun Devil hockey team. He had 7 goals, 7 assists for 14 points, and he led the team in block shots. So some quiet leaders, but they stepped it up and provided something to go forward with for this team.
So, Nick, Ethan, he just gave me his MVPs of the season, but where do you think, as a team, ASU has improved most this season?
Honestly, I think the place that they improved most is speed on the ice, because at the beginning of the season, this was a team that looked slow compared to the teams that they were playing. I mean, you had Notre Dame, other top schools, Air Force, ranked opponents that they are playing at the start of the season, and then they're starting to play ranked opponents at the end of the season like Western Michigan and Quinnipiac, and they're holding their own against them on the ice. They're keeping up with them, and that's something that they just didn't do at the beginning of the season. And a lot of their struggles at the beginning of the season were because they just could not keep up with their opponents. And once you can actually start keeping up with your opponents and the play is going to be a little more even, you're going to start having a lot closer games. And not only did ASU have closer games, but they started winning more games and even tying games against top-tier teams.
And finally, Ethan, after these 2 games against the under-18 national team, the Sun Devils will enter the offseason where they'll get some new recruits, but a majority of this team will be coming back. What are you looking forward to for next season?
Definitely, Hunter. The Sun Devils signed 5 recruits on the signing day back in November. It was Patrick Kula. He got drafted by the Arizona Coyotes. And then Phoenix native Johnny Walker, and then Jacob Wilson, Vito Janssens, and Tyler Malpe. So some big recruits coming in already, and it shows that this program is only going to keep climbing. And there's even another signing day toward the end of spring, and then more recruits could come in over the summer potentially. So there's plenty of room to keep adding to this already young and talented roster. And you mentioned it already. There's 7 players that are going to be returning as sophomores, 12 returning as juniors, and then only 3 going to be seniors. So it's still going to be quite a majority of a young team, and only 4 seniors are leaving this season. So pretty interesting. And then Nick was mentioning that they might switch the captain role to Anthony Croston after playing so well and becoming a leader toward the end of the season. So that would be something to look at going forward. And the team just needs to keep developing and see where it takes them in the off season. It's a long off season. Just got to work hard and find their game and kind of make a stronger identity going into next season.
All right, guys. Well, here's hoping that there's one more solid weekend in store for the ASU hockey team. Thank you to you both for joining me. The Arizona State softball team has had about as good a start as you can ask for. They began the season with a perfect game as Dale Rendak pitched a complete perfect game, and they hosted the Kajikawa Classic, which saw them play 7 games over a period of 4 days. So obviously, like I said, they started out the season with pitcher Dale Rendak pitching a perfect game. The 6-1 in Arizona State history and the first since 2012. That perfect game seemed to indicate how the rest of the weekend would go for the Sun Devils as they ended the weekend a perfect 7-0. With the Littlewood Classic coming up this weekend, it'll be interesting to see if this team will continue their perfect run or if they will cool off. I'm now joined by Sam Ficarra and Joey Callow to help me break down this past weekend for the Sun Devils. Thank you two both for joining me. So Joey, I'll go ahead and start with you. This team has had a great start under first-year head coach Tricia Ford. What have you seen that's really been different from this team compared to last season?
I would say thus far, especially when you get a new coach in there, you want to see that players are buying in, and I think they're certainly doing that. They're being enthusiastic. They're in every inning in the game. And part of Tricia Ford's biggest philosophy is she says they want to play fast and competitive. They want to play aggressive. They want to put pressure on the other team. And the team did exactly like that in 7 games. 7 games up, 7 successful games with 7 wins. And a lot of buying in from the older ladies on the team, such as Dale Rendak and pitcher. Excuse me, escaping my mind here. Brianna Maha, who's 2 leaders of this team. They've done well thus far, and like I said, 7 games, best possible outcome, 7 victories.
All right, and Sam, so he just mentioned that Dale Rendak and Brianna Maha, they were flawless this past weekend. Rendak, of course, had 2 complete games, one of those being the perfect game on Thursday, and Maha, she only allowed 1 run this entire weekend. Do you think that Rendak and Maha can be the leaders of the pitching staff this season?
I think they could. I think they have the potential to. I know Kelsey Kessler was the main pitcher for ASU softball last year, and so she really helped them as they made the tournament in the Baton Rouge regional as well last year. But Maha Rendak pitched very well. Even the freshman pitcher pitched very well. ASU only allowed 7 runs in 7 games, so Trisha Ford will take that. And with Trisha Ford's forte is pitching, and I feel like with her coaching, I feel like Maha and Rendak could improve and be really effective pitchers this season for ASU.
All right, so Joey, obviously, anytime you start off 7-0, there's going to be a little bit of excitement, a little bit of people buying into the hype. Do you think that people do have reason to be excited, or do you think that they maybe need to pump the brakes a little bit?
I would say people have a reason to see this and appreciate it, but it should almost be expected. Last year, the ASU softball team as well started 7-0 in the Kajikawa Classic. It isn't nearly the toughest slate of games they have yet to go in the tournament season, as they're going to play just coming up in a couple weeks in the Mary Nutter Classic in Palm Springs. They got to play A&M, they got to play Notre Dame, schools like Texas and Michigan. Once they play those teams, kind of more the bigger players when it comes to softball and the NCAA, we'll see then. But thus far, definitely impressive starting 7-0. But it's more about what's happening a couple weeks from now, and then after that, what's happening in mid-March once Pac-12 play starts.
All right, and then finally, Sam, this team lost some key offensive pieces in the offseason as players like Jennifer Soria and Abby Spiel graduated. But as far as this team has seemed to be performing fine without those key offensive pieces, would you say that this season's team has more of a balanced offensive lineup compared to last season's?
I have to say so. ASU last year heavily relied on the middle of the order in Soria, Palacios, and other players as well in ASU. But they were more of a power team last year. This season, they're trying to be more of a mix of contact and power. And so I feel like ASU, we saw they stole some bases, which is something they never did last season. So with the mix of contact and power, I think this is top to bottom. This is probably more a balanced lineup for ASU. But it's still there to be seen if the Sun Devils can still compete with some of the top teams in the Pac-12.
All right, guys. Well, we'll have to see what the Littlewood Classic has in store for the Sun Devils this weekend. Thank you, too, for joining me. While softball began this past weekend, baseball is set to begin this upcoming weekend as the Sun Devils will open up their season against Northwestern in a 3-game series. With one of the top recruiting classes in the nation and a solid core of players from last season's team coming back, there is a lot to be excited for at Phoenix Municipal Stadium. I'm now joined by Alec Hendon and Killian McClatchy to help me preview the upcoming baseball season for the Arizona State Sun Devils. Thank you to both for joining me. So, Alec, I'll go ahead and I'll start with you. This team is on the younger side. A lot of the older players either graduated or they left for, the potential of being an MLB player. Who needs to step up inside the batter's box for the Sun Devils this season?
Well, I've highlighted a few names. One of them, I'd say Connor Aldretti is a big one. And we heard today Sam Ferry at Skip's Media Day. He said Sam Ferry will start opening day behind the dish. Another player, Lyle Lynn, he's highlighted very well. But I'd say Aldretti, he also highlighted he had the best fall/winter swinging the bat when the team was together. They went to the Dominican for a trip, and they just said he earned a spot on this team. He's probably going to play second base. He's a middle infielder. He can play either second or short, but they really love the bat. And if you can have a good bat at second base, that'll help, especially in a Pac-12 conference that prides itself in offense. And when the Sun Devils play in the biggest park in the Pac-12, that doesn't hurt their chances either.
All right, Killian, so Alex just talked about who needs to step up on the offensive side of the ball. Who do you think needs to step up on the defensive side of the ball?
On the defense, the Sun Devils are extremely young this season. That's one of the big things. There's 8 different starters. I'm sure he mentioned, in every position. And so there's a lot of those young guys. I look for a guy that I'm really going to be paying attention to over at first base is Taylor Lane. That's what Coach Smith mentioned, that he's going to be the starter. He's not going to be able to play opening day due to a transfer rule violation, some weird thing there. But he's not going to be able to start there. But he is a JUCO transfer from Northwestern Florida State. And he was a 325 hitter back there. And he led that team to a national championship down there at the JUCO level. So I'm really looking forward to watching him, and then Aldretti as well up in the middle. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with Snow, the veteran, moving over to third base full time.
All right, Alex, so ASU plays in obviously a very competitive Pac-12, a conference that produced 4 postseason teams last season, and one of those being the University of Arizona, who obviously made it to the championship round of the College World Series. How important is it going to be for ASU that they are able to win these non-conference games starting out?
It's crucial. I think in all college sports, non-conference wins are important. It sets your tone for the season. You get into Pac-12 play. Arizona State has some tough matchups. They have Oklahoma State, who was in the College World Series, coming here for their 4th game of the season. Then they go and play TCU at TCU. Then they have some other tough matchups, Cal State Fullerton, who they were able to take the series with against last year. These will be important games for them to at least win the series, if not sweep, if they want to make noise, because Coach Smith talked about they're okay flying under the radar a little bit compared to a team that lost in the regionals last year, and they think they can make some noise while not being in the rankings at this point in the season in the tough Pac-12.
And then finally, Killian, this team has one of the top recruiting classes in the nation coming in. Which freshman do you see making the biggest impact this season?
There's going to be a couple guys I'm really going to be looking forward to watching this year. One of them, Hunter Bishop. It's going to be a name that you're going to hear all year long. Guy was drafted in the 24th round by the Padres. He has a huge upside, and he's just a stud on a baseball field. I mean, Coach Smith really mentioned he's probably going to be a starter out in the outfield there opening day. And then also another guy to keep an eye on is Lyle Lin. Lyle Lin from Chinese Taipei. He's going to be the starter at first base opening day because of Taylor Lane not being able to play. They've really liked his bat and his improvement from day one, what Coach Smith said. One more guy to keep an eye on, though, in the pitching staff, Spencer Van Scoy. He's going to be the 3rd starter on Sunday for the Sun Devils, and he's going to be, one of the top pitchers in Indiana coming in that #1 recruiting class. And it's going to be interesting to watch him and how he progresses, especially, you're making your first career start on Sunday in the Pac-12. It's going to be interesting.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me, and we will have to see if the baseball team can start off just as good as the softball team did this past weekend. Thank you, too, for joining me. We aren't quite done yet. While we've talked about women's basketball, hockey, baseball, and softball on today's show, there's one guy that always likes to have the last word. Take it away, Matt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Last Word. Now, all semester, I could talk about ASU football and basketball, but every segment would just be me frustrated and panicking and dying a little bit inside every time I say the name Todd Graham. So instead, I'm going to talk about the baseball team because they give Sun Devil fans something that they don't really have much of these days when it comes to sports, and that's hope. Despite losing a ton of key players in 2015, head coach Tracy Smith was able to lead the Sun Devils to a 2 seed in the NCAA Regionals. Now, after attaining the 5th best recruiting class in the nation, according to Perfect Game, Coach Smith is once again looking to make the team a contender for a College World Series spot in Omaha. Some of the key recruits heading to Tempe are Carter Aldrete, who was a second-team All-American, Hunter Bishop, who was an honorable mention All-American, and Nick Chima, who as a pitcher made the All-Region second team in his native state of Texas. These freshmen and others will be looking to fill the holes that are open due to the departures of shortstop Colby Woodmansee, who was 5th in the Pac-12 in home runs and 6th in RBIs, starting pitcher Seth Martinez, who finished last season with a 9-4 record and a 2.75 ERA, and first baseman David Greer, who led ASU with a 3.44 batting average and made first-team All-Pac-12. Arizona State also has some key returners heading back to the Valley of the Sun. One player in particular is outfielder Andrew Shaps. Shaps batted .321 last season with 27 RBIs and 12 doubles. He was an All-Pac-12 honorable mention last year and will need to be one of the team's best hitters once again if the Sun Devils want to see a large number in the win column. ASU also needs to make some big improvements when it comes to pitching. The Sun Devils were in the bottom tier in the Conference of Champions in the ERA, and losing Martinez doesn't solve any of these problems. Junior right-handed pitcher Eli Lingos will need to step up this season for ASU to have any success in pitching-wise. Last year, Lingos could never really find his groove, as he only had 3 wins with a 4.5 ERA. Being one of the few pitchers who consistently started last year, solid performances by Lingos will certainly take the load off Coach Smith's shoulders when it comes to making big decisions late in games. The one Arizona State pitcher you're going to want to watch this year is someone coming out of the bullpen. Sophomore Chris Isbell shut down opponents last year. He threw 10 strikeouts in 15 appearances with a 2.84 ERA. Expect great things from Isbell once again, as he might move into the starting job in the middle of the year if things become as much a disaster as last year in pitching. Overall, with most of the guys returning, a strong recruiting class, and improvement on pitching, fans certainly have reasons to hope for a spectacular season in the desert and a possible trip to the College World Series in June. I'm Matt Stoboff, and this has been your last word.
Thanks, Matt. Well, that's our show. Thank you for joining us, and you can keep up with everyone that appeared on the show by reading their articles on devilsindetail.com. You can keep up to date with everything Arizona State athletics by following Devils in Detail on Twitter at Devils_detail. Make sure to subscribe to the Devils in Detail YouTube page to be notified first about all of our videos, including roundtable discussions about your favorite Arizona State sports. Again, thank you for joining us, and from everyone here in Phoenix, I'm Hunter Robinson saying we hope to see you again soon.